Man, oh man, are these slow starts a huge issue for the Pacers? Another dreadful fourth quarter in LA, and they can't overcome it this time as just about everything goes wrong for the Pacers against the shorthanded Lakers. Why couldn't they overcome it? What's going on with these slow starts on this road trip? Are the Pacers playing bad right now? And here comes Alex Len. It's all coming today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Saturday/Sunday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, could not pull off the same miracle in LA twice. Could the Pacers falling down early to the Lakers by 25 points in the second quarter. They came all the way back, cut it to 4, but it was not enough. Everything, I would say. This game looked close. The score looks close. The rosy person could look at it and go, wow, they won the last 3 quarters by 15 points. It didn't feel like that at all. They just got smoked. And those first quarters are concerning, and just about everything went wrong in this game, and I have a lot of bullet points I want to get through. And then we'll talk about Alex Len, who the Pacers are reportedly signing as they look to round out their 15th roster spot after trading away James Wiseman, something I thought they would not do till later. Let's start in LA, and a lot of this game can be told by the first quarter. In fact, the Lakers' entire win can be told by the first quarter because of what I just said, even though it didn't feel that way. The Pacers were on the scoreboard better for the final 3 quarters. First quarter, Lakers 44 points, Pacers 22. Lakers 17 for 24. 71% from the field, and they made 5 of their 9 threes. They had 17 rebounds. The Pacers had 8. They had 1 turnover, matching the Pacers. The Pacers were 7 for 23 from the field and 4 for 13 on twos. Ben Mathurin made 3 shots. No other starter made any. The bench was okay to close the quarter. They at least were closer, but the Lakers kept making everything, and they dominated this first quarter. And on one hand, normally, me, data guy, small sample size guy, would say, man, shots weren't flying for the Pacers. They were for the Lakers. Things even out the rest of the game. But I'm not going to do that today because of the flip side of this, which is this has happened a lot recently for the Pacers, whose February has not looked particularly good. We just watched them fall down 25 to the Lakers by the middle of the second quarter. They were down 22 at the end of the first quarter. They were also down 22 in the very beginning of the second quarter 2 days earlier in LA. They were maximum down by 25 in Portland, and they were down 15 in Utah in the first half. They were down 15 plus 3 times in the 4 games on their road trip. It is an absolute miracle they escaped this trip 2-2. They do deserve a ton of credit for their responses in the 2 games they actually won. In fact, they were trending that way for a bit before the third quarter got away from them. But these slow starts are just terrible. And this starting 5 that I have lauded, and many have lauded all season for playing so well, albeit within 1 game an injured Myles Turner, and the second game no Myles Turner at all. Today, Thomas Bryant started, looked really rough, really rough. The mix and match groups were better, the bench was better, and the Pacers were just dreadful from the start. Their offense just looked uninterested, right? And the couple of games they played recently, Portland and Utah, where they fell behind, my issue with their offense was it felt like they were never getting to the right tempo that they wanted. They were either way too slow or way too fast. It didn't feel like that these 2 games in LA. They just felt really disconnected these last 2 games. It's just one play. I don't want to really overlook what they're doing, but there's a play in the second quarter where Aaron Nesmith tries to throw the ball to Siakam, and Siakam's cutting, and it just hits him, right? He wasn't ready for the ball. Like, that kind of stuff doesn't typically happen to the Pacers when they're playing at their best or fully connected. And they had lots of moments like that where you were scratching your head about what they were doing, what they were trying to do, where their head was at on a particular play. It was really weird, really strange game. And so the road trip has had a lot of yikes moments, and a lot of them were thematically shown in this game. For example, I don't think the Pacers defended particularly well on this trip at all. Their offense, I think, is a little worse than their defense, but this game, their defense was exposed in the first 6 minutes, where the Lakers scored 26 points. Truly, they had some better moments in the second half, doing everything. But you can't overcome that. I mean, that is over 200 points in a game pace for 6 minutes. That's a small sample, but it was dreadful. They weren't playing well, and their effort wasn't there either. It was just like a sad awful start where Austin Reeves was cooking them. They couldn't get stops and they couldn't get their offense going. And that became the theme of the game. Reeves had 45, his career high by far. 8 more, I believe, than he's ever had before. He was a plus 14. Dorian Finney-Smith was plus 11. No other Laker better than plus 5. When Reeves was out there, the Lakers were just way better. No one could contain him. Nobody. Andrew Nembhard, who you'd expect to be the guy to contain him, who has contained great players all season, did not do it. Could not do it. Nembhard, a very bad game. Maybe the worst game he's had since returning. 5 fouls, 3 turnovers, 3 assists, 2 points, both on free throws, only attempted 1 shot. Reeves was too much for him and the Pacers. When they would trap, he would just dribble around it, get to the rim. And I'm going to double check this, but I have this in my notes. I believe at halftime of this game, Austin Reeves had made 6 shots. That's correct. He was 6 for 9. And Pacers starters had made 6 shots. That's correct. 1 from Tyrese Haliburton, 1 from Thomas Bryant, 4 for Ben Mathurin. Ben Mathurin started this game good. No other Pacer really did. Austin Reeves alone matching the starters' made shots. What? What is going on? An absolutely dreadful, drag your feet bad performance from the Pacers in this game. And they could have overcome it with some of the efforty stuff, but they didn't. They missed more shots. They missed 50 shots in this game. The Lakers only missed 42. So it makes sense that the rebounding battle is, plus 8 for LA, right? I'm not that concerned about that. The turnover battle ends up in favor of the Pacers. These seem like things that should help them, but they got out hustled at key moments. It wasn't all the time, but especially at key moments. They could not make shots when they needed to. 12 for 38 from 3 means they weren't making the threes that they generated, and 42 points in the paint. So they weren't getting shots from the areas they would like to. They didn't force enough turnovers to do what they did against the Clippers, where they just would run, and never really had anything going in this game stylistically. Again, they found some answers in the second half, but it was so late that it didn't really matter. Once that 4-point lead in the third quarter got back to 13 for the Lakers, this one was over. It felt totally over. A disconnected team that felt bad. I'll read through some of my notes before I talk about something from this game that really struck me that hasn't really ever happened to the Pacers. Reeves cooking the Pacers early and often. His pace was really good. But the 19-9 start was really where this game should have been settled. I know 44-22 is what I said, but 19-9, the Pacers win the rest of the way from that point of the game, right? These starts have been killing them. Any pocket. Haliburton start, just dreadful again. He's been really kind of tough these last 5 games. We'll talk more about him in a second. His stat line looked good. He finished with 19-9 and only 1 turnover. He shot at 46% from the field, made 4 threes, but I'll tell you why that's a misleading perception of his game. Ben Mathurin, though, was quite good. This would have been a complete joke of a start for the Pacers if it wasn't for him early in this game. He didn't finish very well. He still went 5 for 12 with no assists, but he had 16 points. He had 5 boards. And in the first half, he was 4 for 6, right? So 1 for 6 in the second half really held him down. He had the opposite game, kind of some other guys we're going to talk about, but he was the only reason this wasn't a joke early, and this wouldn't even have been kind of competitive late. I already talked about Nembhard, but he was rough on both ends, which is kind of rare. But the last thing I want to get to from this game is the stars, and they're misleading games, I think is the best way to put it, right? If you said before the game that Pascal Siakam is going to have 23 points, 6 rebounds and 4 assists and 2 steals and no turnovers, I think everybody would have been like, yeah, okay. That's a typical Siakam kind of performance. The stat line looks that way. And hey, by the way, Tyrese Haliburton is going to have 19 points, 9 assists, only 1 turnover. He's going to make 4 threes. Like everybody would have said the same thing. Yeah, you know what? That's okay. That's about what he's been doing of late. But it didn't feel that way because neither of them were good early when the Lakers were running away with it. First half of this game, the part that everybody really felt, right? Really exciting for a lot of people, even probably the Pacers on ESPN against the Lakers, chance to show what you can do. First half, Pascal Siakam, 0 for 5 with 2 points, both of which came on free throws with 4 seconds left in the half. So he was 4 seconds away from a scoreless half. 1 rebound, 2 assists, minus 12. Tyrese Haliburton in the first half, 1 for 7, 0 for 3 from deep, 3 assists, and his lone turnover came in the first half. He had 3 points. So the Pacers' 2 players that typically can carry them through or out of moments or games like this combined for 5 points on 1 for 12 shooting in the first half. That can't happen, right? And I get off nights happen. I truly understand that in the NBA, but this wasn't just like missing threes. It was, Haliburton was 1 for 4 on 2s. Siakam was 0 for 4 on 2s. Like they could not get anything going at the rim. They couldn't play the way they wanted. And I would give them credit for good second halves. Siakam 1 for 4 in the third quarter, right? Haliburton did get going in the third quarter. So their stats did end up somewhat normalized and settled, but it was such a really rough first half, really good second half kind of game that it didn't feel that way at all. They needed those guys to give them a lot more, but they also needed Andrew Nemhard to give him a lot more. And Thomas Bryant had an interesting game. He looks 6 for 10 plus 13, 8 boards, 4 assists. That looks really solid. He had 2 points at the break and 3 assists, and he happens to play with a bench group that did really well. So his minutes are down. People ask me why he didn't play as much with a high plus minus. It's mostly because he wasn't as effective as the stat suggested in the first half. So I will give the starters credit for having a much better second half. All of them, right? Basically all of them, but Nemhard had much better second halves. And Mathurin's flipped from everybody else's. But it was way too late because their start was so bad, they could not overcome it. And there's not much you can say else about how bad they were in this game because their start just kind of seeped into their energy and their effort level and how everything felt. Plays that seem great when it's one team is winning by 8 or less just seems so unimportant when you're down 18. The bench was okay. Toppin made half his shots and had 14 points. I thought he made some crucial shots. Neesmith played good defense. He's probably the best defensive player for the Pacers in this game, but he missed all 6 of his threes. McConnell was up fine. Ben Shepherd made threes. Jarris Walker played 16 and a half minutes, missed all of his shots, right? They could have had better bench minutes, but the bench minute was okay. At least the scoreboard between the two teams was okay, but the starters just had tails of opposite halves, and it wasn't good enough. And that is kind of what's been going on for the Pacers. I mean, they are exceedingly lucky that they went 2-2 on this trip. And I'm not going to say this is about Paris and having to travel right after recovering from, that experience with travel and jet lag and all that. I don't know. I'm not going to say it's about one player or one lineup or one thing because they had a lot of different problems every game of this road trip, but something is off, right? They just had one of the best Januaries they've ever had, ever. One of the best months the Pacers have ever had in franchise history. That's not a stretch, right? That was their best winning percentage in a month in like 7 or 8 years. There's a reason Carlisle won Coach of the Month and Nemhard won Conference Defensive Player of the Month. They were playing very well, and they deserve credit for that. They are decidedly not this month. They're 3-2 in February, and all 3 wins they were losing in the fourth quarter and grinded it out twice against teams that they are certainly better than. And once the Clippers win is legitimately impressive, especially with how bad that start was. But they got smoked by the Blazers, who were playing very well. They did not play well against the Lakers at all. And you could say for lots of pockets of recent games, the Pacers have not looked very good. They need the All-Star break to get here so they can settle down a bit because this does not look good. This does not look comfortable. They don't look very connected. And that was a theme. Like, I know this is kind of a buzzword in the NBA, but you can see it and feel it, right? It's connected. When I would ask players what felt better about the way they were playing in January or December, they said, we feel more connected as a group, as a unit, right? You could see it. I said it all the time. I said the ball's moving better. It's more purposeful. They're more connected. And I did end up finding some stats to kind of back that up, but you can just see it sometimes. And right now you can't see it. And they had nothing going well for them as a unit in this Lakers game. Austin Reeves kicked their butt, and they got humiliated on ESPN in a game that most, I think, thought they would win when they saw the injury report. But as we've known for the Pacers for forever, the injury report does not mean anything, despite me making the case that maybe as they scrape through wins against teams they play bad against, they're turning a corner there. Big step back in that department in this game. Brutal loss for the Pacers, 29-22. 2 games till the deadline. They have 2 days off now to get back home and maybe have a practice. We'll see. And potentially have a practice to work in a new player much sooner than I expected in Alex Len, who is reportedly coming to the team. I'll explain why it's reportedly and not certainty yet, what he can bring, why the Pacers potentially targeted him. Coming up here on Locked On Pacers. Before we talk about Alex Len, let's talk about Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash in non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here. With Robinhood Gold, to receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rate subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at 5% per month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings interest rate. Claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial, LLC. Gold memberships now offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Hop on over to Locked On Lakers for your second listen, who I know will have some funny things to say about this game and winning without LeBron and Luka, who were just smiling on the bench and getting a ton of love from the ESPN crew. And then Austin Reeves just going completely ham. He was insane. I mean, he was totally ridiculous how good he was in this game. When he has opportunities to do this, he is kind of this good. He's not ever hit this level, obviously, but he's a very talented player. That said, not one the Pacers should have let get going to this extent. For those watching on YouTube, no idea why the recording software I use is kind of been laggy and bugging, and it's making me all choppy at times. I hope that it doesn't come out too bad in the post-production. See what we can do about it. Let's talk about roster stuff. I'm actually surprised at the speed of this, but that's irrelevant. Why I'm surprised is irrelevant. Report from Shams Charania that I can confirm. Pacers, should he clear waivers, hope to sign Alex Len to their roster. Alex Len spent the last four seasons with the Kings. I can't count. Played with Tyrese Haliburton for part of the 2020-21 campaign before he was traded to the Pacers, obviously. He's been there for a while. He was drafted 5th overall by the Suns forever ago. All these details are not super important, but he got traded from the Kings to the Wizards in that goofy Marvin Bagley, Marcus Smart, Jake LaRavia trade. Alex Len goes to the Wizards, and the Wizards have very little use for him. With the center rotation that they have, featuring a lot of young guys. So apparently they're just going to cut him, right? Buyouts typically don't happen for guys on the minimum. Doesn't seem like that'll be the case here, although we don't know the details. And he hasn't been waived yet. It's 8:45 p.m. for me talking on Saturday. The day he is waived does matter for this process and when the Pacers can actually bring in and officially sign Alex Len. So we'll see when that actually happens. That said, the reason I keep saying the hope is for the Pacers to sign Alex Len is he is on a minimum contract. You know, Ben Simmons is also getting waived, and he is going to be signing with the Clippers. And the reason that can be said with a lot more confidence is because he makes $40 million on his contract. No team can legally claim Ben Simmons. He is going to clear waivers, right? He is going to become a free agent and then sign with LA. Whereas with Alex Len, teams could actually claim him, right? He's on the minimum. Anyone that wanted to and could do it without hitting a hard cap could if they wanted to. Now, usually transactions like this don't get agreed to or get to this point without some knowledge that it's going to happen. I would put very, very, very strong odds, like above the 90%, that Alex Len ends up with the Pacers, but it's not impossible someone claims him. The funny thing is, the Pacers actually could legally claim him in waivers if they were like, we have to have Alex Len. But the advantage of doing what they're doing is if he signs with the Pacers on February 10th or 11th or whenever this actually happens, because the Wizards haven't waived him yet, is that they get a reduced cap hit because minimum contracts become prorated during the season. And that is what they want because of their proximity or distance from the luxury tax, right? If it's prorated, they have a lot of wiggle room in case someone on their team hits an incentive or anything of that kind of sort. Or Alex Len doesn't fit at all. They could cut him later, bring in someone else, right? So they are not going to claim him. That would defeat a lot of the purpose of the savings they get. And Len probably doesn't want to get claimed because then he gets his full contract from the Wizards and gets paid by the Pacers. So I would almost certainly suspect that he will clear waivers and sign with the Pacers, but it cannot be said with certainty just because he's on a minimum deal. That said, I would put insanely high odds on it. And now we actually talk about Alex Len, who is he? Right? I'll do the deep dive on tomorrow's podcast on what he can bring. I love doing that with new guys. It helps me just as much as you guys, but he's a center. Great. Exactly what they need, right? That's exactly what Derek and I just talked about when we talked about the James Wiseman's trade. Is the reason they would consider doing something like this is they could get a third big now and be under the tax and specifically a contributor in case someone gets hurt. Hey, Myles Turner's hurt right now, right? Like they might be able to use Alex Len like instantly if he joined the team. I don't know if they would or not. Obi Toppin as a backup 5 has gone well for them, but that's why they need a 5 is for these games where Thomas Bryant's first half doesn't look particularly good and they're supposed to go small, but the Lakers have Jackson Hayes and he's beating him up on the interior and getting, what did he end up with? 12 rebounds. And, Trey Jameson's coming off the bench and actually giving okay minutes as a backup 5. Like that rarely happens, but another center could have gone a long way for the Pacers. And Toppin at the 5 is something I like. Like I get why the Pacers do it. It makes sense, but it certainly has proven that it's better in certain matchups than others. So another center, right? That is clearly the position they needed the most. I could have and would have. I actually had notes already planned for Monday's podcast about other buyout candidates. Could have made the argument for some other movement shooter types or just in general shooting on the floor or some young youthy guys that could maybe grow at some point. But a center always made the most sense to me. And so on the top level, that's why you would want Alex Len as the Pacers. I don't think Alex Len is as good as Thomas Bryant. I can let People who have really covered both of them speak to that more. I've watched enough Kings to have seen Alex Len enough. He used to be on the Wizards, so I watched him there too. I know what he is good at generally, but it's a different stage of his career. Regardless of my own thoughts, they needed a third center, and that's why they would do this and why they would bring him in. Len this year with the Kings, he was kind of their backup five, but didn't play that much, 7 minutes a game. Trey Lyles ended up scooping up some minutes there. He had one season in Sacramento where he played a good amount the year that they made the postseason, but hasn't really hit the hardwood as much. Hasn't reached 10 minutes a game since 2021-22, right? So his stats look pretty low per game. His per minute stats have kind of been similar to the last 3 years. His rebounding and scoring has taken a dip this year, but the 2 years prior were roughly the same. So the Pacers have to wonder what his level is, but he hasn't played enough to really know. Anyway, 31-year-old Alex Len turns 32 on June 16th. So if the Pacers are in the finals, it would be during the season, but almost certainly after this season ends. And the best thing he is to me is he's really good at screening, right? If you watch him and really watch the Kings at all, Sabonis is obviously a great screener too. That is his best skill on the floor, is setting screens, being big and burly and tough kind of guy. That kind of center can be really effective at times, right? When he had his best season of his career, when he was starting almost half the games for the Hawks, he was very good as a scorer. But all the other seasons around that, his best skill was definitely rebounding. 7.5 per game with the Suns, 7.6 before that, 4.1 in only 15 minutes in the season he was playing for the Kings, right? He's got those kind of like tough guy, burly skills. And so there will be uses for that kind of center. It's not the same as what Bryant and Turner provide. Alex Len's not a shooter type, right? And we learned with Moses Brown, and we've learned a lot watching the Pacers, that centers have to do certain things to really fit in Indiana. Like Moses Brown was a fine player. He was really good on the glass, but his limitations made him not the greatest fit. And so Len, I think the question I'll have is, can he keep up with the Pacers' speed? Can he show enough juice to play in an up-tempo style? Because he's taken 345 threes in his career total, and 200 of them came in just one season with the Hawks. His second high season ever is 59, and he's taken 11 threes the last 3 seasons total, right? So I'm very curious about what he considers his level as a shooter, because the screens he sets are just nasty, man. He just drills people, and that's really good, and he can catch the ball in the short roll. He's not going to really make plays unless he's too close to the rim, but that kind of player has certainly a niche role. There's a reason the Pacers want to scoop him up, and I think the primary answer is depth, and he doesn't stink, right? He's NBA quality for sure. The Kings keep bringing him back for a reason, and of the guys who could have hit the buyout market at center, the list I had, I'll just read to you, of Larry Nance, Daniel Theis, Mo Bamba, Alex Len, Cody Zeller. That's the names I put of guys that I think could be available. I would probably rate him as the best. Larry Nance is the best of those guys, but he probably won't get bought out. Of the actual guys who should be bought out this year, he's probably the best of those guys and isn't just a potential grab, but it's not the greatest group of centers, right? The Spurs already went outside the buyout market and got Bismack Biyombo for their team, but Len's fine, right? He is a fine third center to have. And so he shouldn't be, I don't think he'll supplant Thomas Bryant in the rotation, certainly, but there will be games, right? Turner's hurt right now. There will be games where they need Alex Len to actually play. And there will be some nights where they especially need him to play because I don't want to turn to Toppin at the 5. And that makes him worth it if they can get him at his prorated minimum for the rest of the season. Or I have assumed that's going to be the case, that it would be the rest of the season. I'm not certain of that. I haven't gotten any contract details. If Turner's injury is going to keep him out for a certain amount of time, maybe this is a 10-day. I doubt it, right? I don't know if Len would love to be waived, but maybe he has no choice. 10-day would make some sense because of the arguments I made that, early March is typically the time teams would like to finalize their 15th roster spot. But when it's so obvious what your need is, and Alex Len is available now, maybe they do it now, especially if Turner's injury is going to potentially keep him out for some amount of time. But Carlisle said he was day-to-day. That is just a lot of assumptions on my part. I don't know what the contract's going to be, but it sounds like Alex Len is coming to the Pacers, and it's very obvious why that is the case. Monday, I'll be solo breaking down Alex Len, what he can bring, and 2 other topics that I have yet to come up with. And then Tuesday, we'll do a guest, 2 game breakdowns. Then it's the All-Star break. So Thursday, I'll try to do a guest show, but we're going to have a very crazy week. I'll explain the reasoning much later on this podcast. My life has been a little nutso recently, and I hope the content has still been good for you guys along the way. So that's what I'm doing tomorrow. Alex Len and other various what is going on with this Pacers team topics. And then we'll get rolling with some guests and some games once again as Alex Len faces his former team, the Wizards, in Indy on Tuesday. Thank you guys for watching today. Hope you enjoyed today's show. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Tony R. East, and this podcast at Locked On Pacers. Back tomorrow talking more about the Indiana Pacers. Till then, everybody, have a wonderful day.